August 13, 2024, Urban Luncheon and Meeting to order. And ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Bodie,
Here.
Carberry Montgomery,
Here.
Kroll,
Here.
McBurney,
Here.
Rosendahl.
Here.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
The motion by Bridget, did you move that? I'm sorry. I didn't catch
Yes.
that. Motion by Bridget, Carberry Montgomery, second by Cole. The discussion, please vote, or roll call, please.
Carberry Montgomery,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Bodie,
Yes.
McBurney,
Yes.
Rosendahl.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Welcome. I did say this when I first joined. I unfortunately have a hard stop at 1 p.m. So I know we have a few items here to go through, and hopefully we can get through that. But if I, for whatever reason, need to sign off before we get through the end of the meeting, Amy will take over as Mayor Pro Tem. But let's get started. We'll start with item 3.1, and that is a presentation regarding ADUs by ARP, Polk County Housing Trust Fund, and Capital Crossroads. So Matt, are you going to start this off, or?
Yes, sir. I will be running slides today, and then you'll meet some of our team. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be with you today. To our dear friends in Urbandale, both on council and on staff, and members of the community who are watching. My name is Matt Hauge. I'm the Outreach and Communications Director for the Polk County Housing Trust Fund. I'm going to start my screen sharing again, and it is totally going to work as it always does. Your Honor, are you seeing that? You're still the person on my screen.
Yeah.
Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate that. Okay, so today I am joined here on the Trust Fund team by Toby O'Berry, our Executive Director, and Johnny Alcivar, our relatively new, but we're thrilled to have him Director of Research and Planning. We have AARP Iowa colleagues on the line who you may hear from a little bit later. Paige Johnson, Brad Anderson are on the line from AARP Iowa, and our Capital Crossroads Director, Katie Patchett, is on the line as well. So thank you to all of my colleagues for joining me today. They'll be chiming in during questions or any discussion that takes place. But we wanted to provide you just kind of an overview of ADU policy. Obviously, the public has a lot of questions about what is an ADU? Why would we be talking about ADUs in the city of Urbandale? So today's presentation is intended to address some of those common questions. First, I do want to talk a little bit about the Polk County Housing Trust Fund. First of all, we're an independent nonprofit organization. I'm proud to be speaking to you today from directly under the bright red neon umbrella in downtown Des Moines, but we serve all of Polk County, so half of the city of Urbandale where that county line goes through. Our mission is to provide strategic leadership, expertise, and resources to strengthen communities through expanding affordable housing choice. And we do that through planning, funding, and advocacy activities that serve the region, including public education presentations like we're doing today. But in a typical year, the Polk County Housing Trust Fund also grants out about $2.5 million annually into the community to support a variety of affordable housing projects. I would note that in Urbandale, there have been a number of owner-occupied repair projects for single-family houses that the Trust Fund has assisted over the years. There has also recently, for example, when Urbandale, we were so proud to join you for the opening of Lillis Lofts adjacent to Merle Hay Mall. The Trust Fund was an investor in that property in order to help facilitate the construction of that housing. Those are just a couple of examples. There are many examples of how our organization is proud to serve communities. So the way I kind of explain it, if it involves creating housing solutions for people in need in central Iowa, we've probably worked on it. We're all around the region every year. I'm really proud to have had the opportunity to be with several staff in Urbandale during our Here We Grow campaign to talk about, even before your comprehensive planning process started, some of the priorities that the city had, including one for allowing more housing options like ADUs. So we are thrilled and excited to see you continuing to make progress on your objectives, and our whole team is here to help you and support you in the success of your community however we can. I also want to point out that we're proud to be part of the Capital Crossroads effort that many of you know is now in a new phase called Roadmap. Workforce housing is, generally speaking, a really important priority for Capital Crossroads. I did want to invite our director, Katie Patchett, who's on the call today, to unmute. Katie, if you have just a couple of comments about how what we're talking about today on this call nests within the broader initiative of Capital Crossroads and the Roadmap project. Katie, if you're there.
I'm here. Hi, Matt. Hi, Urbandale. It's so good to be with all of you and our friends at AARP as well. I'm Katie Patchett. I'm the relatively new Executive Director of Capital Crossroads. Our new Roadmap to Opportunity and Prosperity for All, the third iteration of Capital Crossroads, was launched this January on the 10th, and I started on the 16th of January. So both this third iteration and myself were both relatively new and getting out into the community so we can connect with folks like you all. And I know that several of you on this call are very familiar with Capital Crossroads as you've been deeply involved in previous iterations, and your work has really helped get the initiative to where it is today. So special thank you to folks like Mayor Andewig, Councilmember Bodie, and other folks who have been involved not only in this iteration, but previous ones as well. For folks who are less familiar with Capital Crossroads, just a quick overview. It was launched as a major collaboration between business, government, education, nonprofit, and social sectors a little more than a decade ago when community leaders came together to form a 5-year vision plan for Central Iowa and really take a look at the issues that are affecting folks who live, work, and play here, and to try and work with the current and future trends that are going to have the greatest impact on our community's ability to grow and be an equitable place for folks to find success. So this is the third iteration, as I mentioned. The roadmap was launched earlier this year, and it came to be through a series of community planning discussions, research, data collection, focus groups with community members, and from all of that came the 6 critical outcomes that were identified as really the key areas where Capital Crossroads needs to focus its effort in order to address the key issues that are having the greatest impact on Iowans in Central Iowa. And one of those critical outcomes is workforce housing. It was identified across sectors and across the region as a critical need and an area where multi-sector collaboration has to focus efforts and unite the efforts that we're taking in order to make progress in this area. So we have been working very closely with our partners over at Polk County Housing Trust Fund, as well as community partners like Habitat, AARP, and then working with industry partners from Hubble Development and other folks as well to really take a look at this issue holistically and see how we can unite our efforts across sectors to make a difference. And we are working under that Here We Grow umbrella. So obviously our goals include things like making sure that there is an adequate supply of housing near jobs in Central Iowa, that the housing mix reflects the jobs mix, and that everyone has equitable access to housing opportunities here in Central Iowa. And through Here We Grow, we're also looking at 3 specific buckets of work in the first couple of years of the roadmap. And those are regional counting and preservation. So working with our folks over at PCHTF to identify where workforce housing exists across our communities, who has what, how long is it slated to be there, and making sure that all of our local decision makers have that same information so we can have informed conversations and make informed strategies moving forward. We're also looking at zoning and land use reform. So what are some of the opportunities and some of the barriers that local zoning and land use ordinances have in terms of building more housing and development in Central Iowa, because we all know that we need more housing that has to be more affordable and needs to be built faster. We all know that across our communities in Central Iowa. So if there's a way that we can look at local ordinances and make reforms, we're trying to have some of those conversations as well. And then also looking at economic development incentives. So what tools do cities have in order to incent developers to come and build in their communities? What tools do we have at the state level, whether it's through ISU extension or through IFA, to identify workforce housing opportunities in communities and to help get that building going at a quicker pace and resulting in more affordable units. So those are really the 3 focus areas that we're looking at. We're doing a lot of community engagement like this with local housing experts and advocates in order to make sure that our approach is informed and reflective of what the community is requesting of us. And we're just going to keep banging that drum every single day to talk about the importance of workforce housing and working with our partners to move the needle on this issue.
Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you for your partnership on so many levels. We're so proud to have worked with you up to this point and continue to work with you for the next couple of years, really focusing on workforce housing. Just to emphasize one of Katie's points, ADUs really fall in that area of housing policy where we're focused on boosting the supply of housing that's available at different price points in our region. In order to produce more housing, we know that one of the best things our communities can do is standardize, streamline, and simplify the rules of the road for how that housing is built. And that's really what the conversation in Urbandale and around the region about accessory dwelling units is intended to do, effectively legalize housing so that when people desire, in this case, a person as a homeowner is often the developer of an ADU. When that person chooses to add an additional residence on their property, that they have the tools, capability, knowledge, and expertise to get that done and offer that housing with communities. In this case, in a way that meshes very well with the fabric of existing neighborhoods. And that really goes to the definition of what is an accessory dwelling unit. That term is not the friendliest term, but an ADU is actually just a smaller residence that's located on the same residential parcel as a larger primary residence. And here you can see some examples of ADUs, in this case above a garage in the background there, kind of in a side yard, several above garages really. That's a pretty common way of constructing ADUs, but they can be added to a house in several ways, as I'll show you in just a moment. I want to first though kind of highlight, we've been talking about accessory dwelling units for a while, and we are really excited that we were able, including to invite a number of our Urbandale colleagues to tour this ADU, which was constructed by the nonprofit Home Inc. in the Oak Park neighborhood. I know some of you on the call had the opportunity to tour this when it opened. So the front part of this lot is an American four-square house that is a very conventional new construction house in Oak Park. But in the backyard there, you can see this blue building about the size of a garage, but it's actually half garage and half house. And there you can see just a couple of interior photos. Normally in this presentation, I would actually show a video of it. I'm going to try to for just a second. There is no audio with this, but I just want to show you a little bit about how the ADU lays out. Katie, you're on my screen right now. Give me a thumbs up if that video is playing. She's thumbing up. And don't worry if you can't hear it. Here you can see we've got some drone footage showing there's the house in the front, and there's a deck that connects it to the ADU in the back. Here you can see what that house looks like, that conventional four-square house. And that's the back view. It's just a garage door, and that's the only sign that there's housing there. The interior is not huge, but is efficient. Has a full kitchen, bedroom, and in this case, laundry facilities are included in the ADU as well with a full bathroom. So I'm going to stop that there just because we're not running Zillow. We need to stay on time in our presentation today. But I would just emphasize that if you come to the Trust Fund's website, we actually created a YouTube video series that sort of told the entire story of the construction of this ADU and how it was designed. You can watch the whole series, or members of the public can, at pchtf.org/ADU. If you want to learn more about one of these, why somebody would want to build one, what it actually looks like when you're building one, what the steps are, and all sorts of things like that. So there's a lot of material available in that video series. Moving on, though, I just wanted to highlight one of the drone shots that's actually discussed in the video series. So here you can see how this lot lays out. This lot is about 135 or 140 feet deep by about 50 feet wide in Highland Oak Park. It's an older part of Des Moines, so it has a narrower lot. If we draw on top of it, you can see that the main house is up front. The ADU is the brown shaded area in the back. Parking for the property is provided by a one-car garage and two paved parking spaces that are located it's alley loaded. So there's rear parking in this particular neighborhood on that deep lot. So we'll talk a little bit about how that all comes together in a zoning code in just a minute. But first, I wanted to show, this is just my ADU diagram. Everybody who talks about ADUs has an ADU diagram. Ours highlights how ADUs can be added in an attic. They can be added above a garage. They can be a standalone building in the backyard. They can be an addition to a house. They could be above an attached garage. They could be a walkout basement in a lower level. Really, the options for how to add an ADU to a property are endless. But I would point out that the options for building an ADU are also constrained by what city zoning will allow. And so the choices that Urbandale will have to make as you navigate your comprehensive plan process and work on your ADU policy is just kind of looking at these different options and making some decisions about what you feel will mesh well in your community. But obviously, we're encouraging as many different formats of ADUs to be allowed at the homeowner's preference as possible. The real benefit of ADUs is that not only are they cute, they're also flexible. ADUs provide a housing option that can change with a family through all phases of that family's life. And I want to talk about a few of those. Obviously, in many jurisdictions, an ADU can be rented for income. Jurisdictions usually will require the ADU to have a rental certificate. That's very much in line with the expectations for any other rental property in the community. We actually, even just a side note, we get asked this sometimes, we even encourage, just for managing of relationships and keeping everything smooth, that even if it's a family member, that a lease agreement be put in place for someone living on your property with you in an ADU, just to make sure that the responsibilities are clearly spelled out in writing. People can use them for a variety of purposes, like an adult child who returns to live with a family again briefly after college. You can use it as a bonus room or an office space. And then, our friends from from AARP really talk to us a lot about how beneficial these are as independent living for an aging parent or relative or family member. Particularly Brad Anderson talks about how in the days of the pandemic, everybody was really focused on providing, obviously, an independent living experience, but close to home and with family support available right there next door. And I think a lot of us really realized how much that proximity matters in situations where we have a lot going on in the world. And so ADUs provide that opportunity for a loved one to be close with a family. And I just want to look at ADUs from a variety of perspectives. As I said, if you ask a family about the benefits of ADUs, they're going to tell you that a lot of people are living alone or in smaller households these days. That's just been a trend nationally across the country. The size of the American household is shrinking. So frankly, we would do well to have more housing stock in our communities that's available in that 1 or 2 bedroom size for the needs of today's households. And, ADUs provide that independence and private living space that a person can fully have to themselves while having proximity to loved ones. A city planner might have a different answer about why ADUs are beneficial, and that answer is all about public infrastructure investments and maximizing a community's infrastructure. You already have beautiful neighborhoods in your community, many of which have land available for the construction of this housing. If you allow more land and more valuation into these areas, it provides a benefit and a redevelopment opportunity for your established neighborhoods that can take advantage of your existing infrastructure while not disrupting people who are already established in the neighborhoods. So often in housing, the time is tension occasionally and debate, but we really like ADUs because, frankly, they fit right in, and they're part of a range of strategies we sometimes refer to as gentle density because of how well they blend into existing neighborhoods. Finally, you can ask an economist, and there's one sitting right there. I asked him earlier, you might say. And what we hear from economists, and seriously, actually, we had Jenny Schutzen, you may remember, to our Affordable Housing Symposium. Thank you to so many of you who joined us for that. Jenny is a national housing economist who did tell us that long-term housing affordability in our region, in our communities, will depend on how well we allow new housing to be built where the market demands it. So to have a healthy housing market with access and opportunity for all people, you need to make it easier to build housing of all types. And just to quickly address this issue, some folks ask me, Matt, you're very concerned about affordable housing. And I say, why, yes, I am. Thank you for noticing. And they say, Matt, are ADUs really affordable housing? And I say, Well, it depends a lot on the choices that someone makes when they build one. An ADU can be really as expensive as you make it, to be honest, because they're usually built by a homeowner who's going to be in charge with those decisions. But they can be done if they're an addition to a house for, $50,000 or $75,000, depending on how much modification of the house is necessary. The other thing I would point out is if ADUs are rented, then they allow rental housing to enter into highly desirable neighborhoods that are primarily single family in character. And the smaller size of an ADU usually means it's going to occupy a more affordable space within the area's rental market. So they end up having beneficial affordability aspects of them if they're allowed to be used for rental and other purposes like that. Okay, let's keep going. One of the things that we got very interested in recent years is, like I say, the idea of zoning policy. What are local government policies allowing in the community to be built? And so we did conduct last year a survey, a regional survey. The note about handouts on your table won't apply, but we provided this handout in email to you, so you have it in your inbox. And we're happy if that folks who want to have the handout on your table can also download our fact sheet from pchtf.org/ADU. We contacted regional governments to ask them about ADU policies in their area. I'm going to switch my screen sharing for just a second to try to bring up. This is a more technical summary of what jurisdictions who responded to the survey told us in response to the survey. It has the specific responses that Urbandale gave in answering. We have provided this back to your city staff, but I'm happy to provide additional copies of it at any time. Some of the features that I would point out that are kind of unique about Urbandale's existing ADU policy is that it's relatively limited in the areas or the zoning districts where ADUs can be allowed to be constructed. There are some pretty restrictive limitations on the size of the ADU, but probably most notably, we received feedback that the ADU cannot be in a detached building. Rental is not allowed. The ADU must be occupied by family or caregivers. A minimum of 2 parking spaces are required off-street for the ADU. And these are really areas that are going to be pretty restrictive in determining what ADU capacity you ultimately see in Urbandale built after you, or if you were to make a change to your policy. And so these are some of the areas you might want to address in a code revision. Just to look at the regional trends, across all of the survey that responses that we received, usually there is a limit on the size of ADUs that can be built in the region. That varies between 650 square feet up to 1,200 square feet. Generally, the ADU must always be smaller than the main residence. ADUs come in all shapes and sizes, but communities like Urbandale may require it to be attached to a residence, or you may be required to build an ADU that matches your main house in look and style. Several communities say they'll allow, from the community's perspective, shared utility connections between the main house and the ADU. You always want to call your local utilities and also ask them if you're considering building. You're going to need off-street parking for your ADU, probably in most places where they're allowed in Des Moines. Typically, that's going to be a requirement for 1 or in Urbandale's case, 2 spaces on top of what's required for the main house. Obviously, lower parking requirements are a big way communities can actually make sure ADUs are built. While ADUs can often be rented, typically, as I said before, that rental certificate applies. Some communities have chosen to put in place where either the house or the ADU must be occupied by the owner of the property for an ADU to be built. And, that's something that communities will need to consider in making your choices. And the final decision is not really on these trends, but communities have the right to either allow residents to construct an ADU by right or without administrative approval, or require something like a conditional use permit. Obviously, the more open the expectations are, the more folks can know those expectations up front. Frankly, the fewer expectations that are placed on homeowners, the more likely you are to see additional ADU production in your community. I want to say that there are lots of ways to get more information about accessory dwelling units and their benefits. You can download our fact sheet or view the video series that I mentioned earlier on our website. And you can also visit aarp.org/ADUs, where they have a really wonderful publication called the ABCs of ADUs that does a great job of answering a lot more questions that people have. And so it's available right there on AARP's website as a free downloadable PDF. And I usually have copies with me. I've given most of mine out over time, so you can print that out anytime you want. That wraps up the prepared part of our presentation about ADUs today. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be with you and share about this housing opportunity that meshes so well with existing neighborhoods. We know you have a busy agenda today, but if there are questions, the team and I are here on the line to address any of those that may arise. Thank you all so much.
I have a couple of questions, probably more. First one, I guess, would be for our staff. And as you know, I was adjacently, familially involved in the Home Inc. ADU unit, and just think it's a fabulous concept. And I feel very strongly that a classic Urbandale could be a good location to try to do an ADU addition to, an existing home as a demonstration project versus a new construction like you guys were doing in Oak Park. But I guess the information that Matt shared related to our codes, I guess I was under, and this is kind of my fault, I guess I didn't pay close enough attention, that our new comp plan was going to be more friendly to ADUs than what Matt made it sound like in his presentation. So I don't know if Steve can jump in or someone. I thought we were going to make it easier, and maybe we did make it easier, but it still doesn't sound very easy for someone who would want to do an ADU in the older part of Urbandale.
Yep, this is Steve. What's on the books now has been on there for several years. We are aware that it is very constrained and not all that friendly at this moment. If you look at page 27 of our comprehensive plan, there's half a page that's talks about promote ADUs. So we have every intention of going back and tweaking our code to make it much more friendlier than it is today. We have been working on that. We are working on that. We've talked to a couple of property owners that are interested. So that is a process that is underway. And I expect some results and bringing something before council yet this fall would certainly be my hope. But it all came about with a meeting with Hubble several years ago when this topic came up. We put it in the code, I don't even know, 5-6 years ago maybe. No one has taken advantage of it, in part because I think it is very restrictive. But we have had conversations, staff members in my department have had conversations with AARP and with Matt and with different organizations. The comp plan did specifically address it, and it is something that we are going to work on very soon here.
So, Steve, it's just a matter of getting our ordinances caught up with what our
Yep.
comp is.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's exactly right. Yep.
That's the part that I had the disconnect on. But so it sounds like we're headed in the right direction here. Thank you.
All right.
I'd
Anything
just
further?
say, from my perspective, thank you for presenting this. It was very helpful, very informative. When we're doing this and going through the process, I think it would be really great to, we have the process of we're going to change things and how does that work, but then just making sure that we publicize adoption and kind of get an idea for what are the stumbling blocks that people may still encounter as part of that, just so that like the first time we implement, we're going to be able to knock it out of the park and see adoption regularly roll and see people pick that up and run with it.
Yep, absolutely.
I've just got a quick question for Matt or whomever. where can this go wrong? Where have there been stumbling blocks?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. The answer that I would give to that really is a two-part answer. First of all, when an ADU is added to a property, a homeowner is playing the role of developer. And so it's not like, a new subdivision of homes where they're very experienced with dealing with the permit counter and city expectations and rules and requirements. And so the council person's previous comment, in my view, is right on the mark, that there does need to be some thought put into, if homeowners approach the permit counter seeking a building permit, what are the expectations that are going to be given to them, and will situations be clear and easy to understand? You're not first to go through this process, but we're proud of you for being among the leading communities in considering ADU reform. I would point to Polk County, the city of Des Moines, the city of Iowa City, and the city of Cedar Rapids that have recently gone through processes to expand where ADUs can be built. Johnston also made some tweaks to their zoning code in a process similar to what you're doing now. And the only reason they were first is just they did their comprehensive plan a little bit earlier than you did, their current update. So you're right on track. But calling some of those cities and speaking with building permitting officials about their experiences with people who approach the permit counter and are seeking ADU advice can really be, I think, a very helpful way of understanding what questions might come in and how do you know you're prepared for them. Another area that I think is important to realize is, in forming your updated code, you are going to face a number of choices about what expectations are right for ADU development for your community. Some of them are going to deal with rental expectations for ADUs, when, what, and how is that allowed, or like I say, the parking requirements. What we know is that some of these choices that restrict the use of the ADU can have downstream consequences for people who are seeking home lending to construct an ADU, what they're allowed to do in terms of renting it, for example, or requiring additional off-street parking may increase the cost of building an ADU. Therefore, just like you've learned before, the choices that you make in how you establish your code are going to be a trade-off between predictability for you in your code of ordinances and facilitating folks to actually make that choice and have the resources to build one. So you will face some choices in terms of what's right for Urbandale, and consulting with other communities who have made this type of policy reform could be a way to help navigate those choices. Those would be the two main areas for your consideration that I would highlight going forward.
Thanks, Matt. That's great. Thanks.
All right.
Bob, I do have one question, if I may.
Sure.
From Matt's perspective, how have you dealt with communities and the homeowners associations in certain neighborhoods?
That's a good question, sir. To be honest with you, the policy reforms that have passed in the region so far, being in Des Moines and unincorporated Polk County, are areas where there are not as many HOAs that are in place. I think that, your robust public comment period and any code changes that you would make, I hope would include some stakeholder engagement with folks so that they would be able to be aware of those changes and how they're implemented. You'll be able to address some of those specific concerns that might come up through public education and helping people understand, for example, if Urbandale's expectation will be that the style of an ADU matches the style of the home it's next to, making sure that people are aware of how you plan to operate this ordinance, will be important in addressing the concerns that come up. But in terms of HOA policies, that's not something we've seen as much in the region so far, and we'd be happy to follow up, through AARP or some of our national partners who may have more experience with that particular question in other states. So I will point out that Brad and Paige are on the call, and maybe they have an opportunity to bounce that question out to some of their national peers.
Thank you.
All right. Matt, Katie, thank you very much for the presentation. And we obviously, I think there's a sentiment that we want to move forward on this, and we will continue forward. So thanks for your assistance on this and your education. So.
Thank you
so much, everybody.
Thank you for your time today.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, we'll move on then to item 3.2, and that is to discuss the city manager search request. There was a request for proposal for the where we are in the process, and give a summary. I think Erin Freeman, our HR director, is on here. Erin, correct?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Bob. You're the one I see in my window. Can you give me a thumbs up if you see my presentation? Great. Excellent.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. It's been about a month since we talked last collectively as a group about the RFP process and the proposal. So I wanted to give you a quick update on that today. It should be a pretty short presentation. If you recall, when we first met, June 18th, was the date we decided to move forward and initiate the RFP process. So internally, we worked on putting together a draft request for proposal and presented that to you for comment on July 2nd. We tweaked that based on some comments that we got back from Mayor and Council, and then we published that live July 10th. We put that on our website, as is the city standard practice, and we additionally sent that, we took the initiative to send that to several players in that industry that are big names that we knew that might be interested in that, so to really get the word out. And then our proposal window was open for about 3.5 weeks. It closed on August 4th, and during that time, we received a total of 7 proposals. Once that window closed, we reached out to references that the consultants were required to provide in their proposal, and then we distributed those 7 proposals to the firm selection committee, which, to remind you, consisted of myself and AJ, as well as Mayor Bob and council members Kroll and Bridget Carberry Montgomery. So we had a little less than a week to review a whole lot of paper proposals and addendums that were included with that, and went through our rating process, rating them on a variety of different criteria that we'll talk about here in a minute. And then we met just yesterday and talked about those collated ratings and an average amongst our committee, and unanimously agreed on one vendor that we all felt really comfortable moving forward with. So let's talk about the different proposals really quickly that we got, just to give you an idea. The rating criteria that we ranked them on was pretty heavily in terms of experience and qualifications. We gave that a 50% weighted score. So that is everything from the consultant and the firm's experience, years of service, qualifications, relevant experience, not just doing city manager searches, but somewhat locally in at least the central region, rather than an emphasis on the west or the east coast. And their recruitment timeline that we asked them to outline for us, as long as the detailed action steps that would happen within each of those phases in their recruitment timeline. Then we weighted 30% towards the fee that they plan to charge for the project, as well as the candidate guarantee that they offer, and the least weighted percentage going to their proposal being tailored to the city of Urbandale, really understanding what it was that we were looking for and who we are, as well as their professional client references and then other factors that may have come up. So in terms of the 7 different proposals that we see, you can see there the rankings that we awarded them. The average points there is amongst all of the submitted ratings for that. MGT Impact Solutions came in top out of 500 points. They scored 446, which is pretty remarkable, an average amongst the committee. You might also know them as GovHR. GovHR is a national firm who specializes in public sector services and consulting, not just recruiting, but all kinds of consulting services. They were just recently acquired by MGT, so they're operating under that name now, but still absorbed the GovHR consultants and staff. So if you see those used interchangeably throughout this presentation and later on, that's why. We also received proposals from SGR, Colin Basinger and Associates, Reptelis, Slavin, To the Top, and Charter Oak. So there were, 3 pretty high up there at the top. Number 2 and number 3, though, I would say there was some disparity in our rankings where maybe one person on the committee ranked them much lower and one person much higher. So there were some outliers, whereas MGT, everyone ranked them really high. I believe the lowest score anyone gave them was around 415 or 420. So, unanimously, everybody felt pretty strongly about their proposal. So why MGT Impact Solutions, or also known as GovHR, who is the consultant firm that the committee is recommending for approval next week on the regular council meeting agenda. In terms of their background, as I mentioned, they specialize in offering services specifically to the public sector, and all of their consultants have past local government work experience. So, for example, we actually utilized GovHR last year in 2023 for the fire chief recruitment process, and the consultant that was assigned to that particular project had previously been a fire chief for a number of years. Whereas in this case, for the city manager project, they would assign consultants that have previous city manager experience. And that is the case for both of the consultants that they outlined in their proposal. Both do have previous city manager experience, and even some in the Midwest and in Iowa as well. So the cost for the project they outlined was $24,000 plus travel expenses, which was well within budget and pretty middle of the road in terms of the proposals that came in. The lowest cost projection we received was $13,000, but from a firm that really didn't understand the project and didn't have any experience, all the way up to almost $52,000. So $24,000 is pretty middle of the road. And then in terms of the experience, as I mentioned, they have worked in the Midwest with city manager placements quite often and nationally as well, of course. But most recently, they placed a city manager in Marshalltown just this year, in Windsor Heights in 2023, and previously in 2020, Indianola in 22, Knoxville in 2021, and Muscatine in 2020. So a lot of experience locally with that specific type of recruitment. They've outlined a timeline of roughly about 14 weeks from the first planning meeting that we would hold with them, which should get us to close to the end of the year with having an offer out before the holidays. Fingers crossed, assuming everything would go well and according to schedule. And then they had a strong candidate guarantee as well. So if for some reason the candidate were to voluntarily leave or be unappointed by mayor and council, then they would offer one additional recruitment at no cost, aside from actual expenses such as advertising and travel, if we needed that within the first 12 months from appointment, the original appointment. So a pretty strong guarantee there, with some peace of mind that if for some reason a candidate were not to work out, that we would not have to restart the entire RFP proposal process and pay for everything all over again. The timeline and outline of the project that they detailed in their proposal was pretty thorough. Initially, that would be phase one, develop the position assessment, announcement, and brochure. That is where we would gather information from that initial introductory and planning meeting. That could be via virtual meetings, e-surveys, and from a variety of stakeholders that you determine, obviously your group, as well as if you want them to collect information and feedback from any other groups outside or inside the organization. And then phase two would begin the advertising and their candidate recruitment and outreach. So in addition to obviously advertising it on the common sources for that type of position in social media, their consultants will personally reach out to candidates that are in their network that they've collected of people they've either placed before or interviewed before that they think would be a good fit for our organization based on what we're looking for, based on the information we gave them in phase one, and based on all kinds of things like the size of our organization and the type of community that we have. And phase three is candidate evaluation, where they, the consultants, would be reviewing the credentials of all the candidates that apply directly to them. They go through a thorough screening process that involves a written questionnaire, a 1-hour virtual interview with each candidate, and then they would conduct pretty thorough reference checks as well. And then finally, at phase four is when we would meet with them again to review the portfolio of all the candidates that they feel are relevant for what we're looking for. And at that point, your group would narrow it down to 4 to 5 candidates to go through the in-person process. That in-person process in phase 5 looks like the consultants helping us to develop questions and evaluation criteria, them conducting the background checks, and then that are helping to coordinate and facilitate the interview process. So we had previously identified 3 groups: mayor, council, department directors, and a citizen advisory committee, and potentially a city tour following all the interviews for finalists on day 2 of that as well. And they will help coordinate travel and accommodations, and then meet with you at the end of day 1 to talk about who you like and who you'd like to see, 2 to 3 people maximum for day 2 of that interview process. And then finally, when it comes time to make a decision and an appointment, they will assist with negotiation of an employment contract as well. So really full cycle assistance detailed in their project really from beginning to end. Any questions? There's no action that we're really asking today. We all just wanted you to be aware of the process that we've gone through. That's kind of been happening behind the scenes for the last 5 weeks in the evaluation of those different proposals that came in. If NGT is a firm that you are comfortable with based on everything that you heard, we would present their professional services agreement for your approval at the next council meeting on August 20th. So questions?
Any questions? Yeah, I'll let Bridget and Amy, if you want any comments, but we did spend a lot of time yesterday on this one through it. I think, yeah, I'll speak, as Aaron said, I think we're all pretty comfortable with NGT. And I've also followed up with some references from them as well. So. But certainly take a look at it over the next week. And if any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us to answer those questions.
So Aaron, I guess you might have said this and I wasn't paying too much attention. Are you going to send the proposal from them to the rest of the council?
Yes, I did that this morning.
Okay, great.
That was my question as well.
A lot of details in there. We actually didn't spend a lot of time yesterday, but we spent a lot of time prior to yesterday going through the full 1-inch binder of proposals. So thank you to the HR staff who did all of that. Yes, who did all of that work for us, because I know that wasn't easy, an easy task.
Yes, 1 inch of papers is generous. That's about right.
That's right.
And I will say that their timeline, their 14-week timeline from the time we first meet for that introductory and planning meeting, you know, if we were to meet pretty quickly, let's say at the next Lunch and Learn, which is September 10th, that pushes us to, assuming there's no delays, which probably not feasible given that this really happens through and leading up to the holidays, you know, would have us ready to appoint a candidate around the end of the year. So I would encourage us to think about our calendars. Feel free to reach out to me, AJ, Mayor Bob, anyone that can forward it to me if you have any kind of blackout dates on your calendars, personally or professionally, now through the end of the year, so that we can work around theirs. There's a lot of stakeholders to work around in the planning of this, so that will be one of our biggest challenges.
Yep. I was just talking to Aaron about that because I will be gone a little bit in December. So if any of you have any blocks where you're going to be out, please get that to Aaron so we can plug that into the calendar, because it's vital that we have 100% participation at all steps of the process where we're involved.
I just want to thank you all. I think this was a yeoman's job done, and I thought the proposal looked great.
Good.
Great, thank you.
Aaron, most of the meetings that we would be doing with the consultants are virtual, correct?
Yep, that's correct. We would not have them come on site until it's time to actually conduct the 2-day in-person interview process.
Okay. I guess I haven't told this to anybody, but I'm contemplating having foot surgery at some point this fall, but I'll only be in the house for a week or 10 days, but would be available for online activities, and we'll work. I'll talk to you, I don't know, or when we get a contract figured out, because I want to schedule the surgery around other stuff in my life so it works, because I have flexibility.
I would say best case scenario, I'm hoping, assuming that their schedules are available, because I know they run lots of recruitments concurrently for various entities that they're working with, that they could attend the next Lunch and Learn on September 10th. Is there anyone not planning to attend that?
I do have a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Ireland with my son, and I leave on September 7th, and I return on the 19th, and I had not planned on bringing a laptop with me. I'm very sorry.
Understandable. Okay.
I guess I mean,
Maybe,
if we
well,
could meet before, I mean, I think we could figure out a special lunch and
Yeah,
learn
yeah.
and not
Yeah,
wait until the 10th or do something prior to Pat leaving. I think that would, help.
And I'm out the week prior to that.
What dates, Amy, do not work for you?
Amy, what were your dates?
I am out August 30th to September 9th.
Okay.
And Pat, one more time, your dates, please.
I leave September 7th and return on the 19th.
Thank you.
I could probably do something remotely, maybe the morning of the 7th, but I'm not sure. Otherwise, I'm kind of out. Yeah. So sorry.
Yep, I understand. Just I didn't catch your dates there completely, so I just wanted to ask that again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other dates late August through mid-September that I should try to avoid for any other council members? Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
We'll get something figured out. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I know everybody's busy, so we will work it out so we can, but that's, again, with the goal of always having 100% participation where we need to be part of that process. So. All right. Thank you, Aaron, for compiling that and moving us forward. We'll move on then to item 3.3, and that is to consider the property acquisition for 10841 Douglas Avenue. AJ, are you going to start us off on this, or Curtis? Who's going to start us off?
Well, I'm going to hand it off to Curtis. He's been doing the work on this, and he made the presentation at your last closed session meeting. So, Curtis, I'll turn the floor to you.
Sounds good. And I'm really sorry, but the camera isn't working. That's okay, though, because the star of the show is a slide deck. Can someone let me know if you're seeing it okay?
Good.
Okay, great. I'm going to move through these very quickly so that we can open it up for conversation. We do have with us Garrett Fulbright from Kalia Capital and Ray Hamilton of CBRE Inc. So let's get started with an overview. This is a summary of the highlights of what it was in the council packet. Here's an overview of the site with the aerial. You have I-35 at Douglas on the west, and then the property is 10841 Douglas, a collection of 3 buildings there. Here's a little bit of a closer up. The 3 buildings are the main north-south buildings.
I can see it's Rivers, you know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, your slides are not forwarding.
It's not.
Your slides are not forwarding.
Yeah, all we're seeing is the small slides on the side. Wasn't a full picture, Curtis.
Okay. Let me try again. Derek is here. He has a question. He's leaving. I don't know. Let me try again. Okay.
Better.
What do you see on your screen? Okay, we're just going to keep this mode instead of the presentation mode. Here's the street view. Here are the basics on the property. It's just over 2 acres, built in 1972. The assessor has it at a total valuation of $820,000. You can note that the building is quite a bit less than the land value. So clearly that is an assessor opinion of where the buildings are at in terms of valuation. And we're looking at a total square footage of about 21,500. This is the location for a number of public safety calls. You see the police calls there in 2022, 23, and 2024 year to date at about 50. Fire and EMS calls are listed here, mostly EMS. There was a substantial fire early this year that is currently still impacting the property. An overview of how we got here. We received an initial proposal from Kalia Capital on May 24th, but that was early and we did not have the financial detail, but the early proposal was to refurbish the units, create 62 units, keep about a third of them affordable, similar to the agreement at 7625 Hickman. There was a construction estimate of $1.3 million, but that was pre-engineering and structural review. It didn't account for fire sprinklers or ADA accessibility and a number of other major building systems. So that was very early in the process. On July 15th, Kalia Capital came to town with Ray Hamilton, and the city manager's office, building and economic development visited the site, and then had a follow-up meeting on July 16th. Then we looked at models for an affordable housing rehab similar to Motel Relax down on Hickman, but that was contemplating to make the project work around that 3 to 4 million mark, 2.75 to 3.75, representing somewhere between 34 and 50% of the project rehab if it were 4.6 million. Quickly engaged in conversations with Supervisor Brownell and Polk County Housing Trust Fund that week. Noted with building that the center building cannot support occupancy without a review by a structural engineer. That all led to a staff perspective to see that the three buildings are not likely to result in a successful rehab project, at least not one that the city, or at least from a staff level, felt comfortable recommending. And so that led to the thought of noting in the comp plan that this is an area that is called out for land acquisition. We began to negotiate a process where the city could acquire the property by inheriting or being signed the purchase agreement that was negotiated by Kalia. So to look at just the outline of the cost, we'll begin with 1.9 million. That was the negotiated price between Kalia and the motel owner. Kalia paid $19,000 in escrow when the property went under contract, so that leaves 1.881 million. Then adding in an assignment fee paid by Kalia plus $25,000 in a broker fee to CBRE, plus a reimbursement of $19,000 to Kalia equals $2,050,000. Are the what you could call hard costs for the city. Obviously, there are ancillary legal, engineering, recording fees like that, but these are the bulk of the cost, $2,050,000. Very important to note that the property is being acquired for blight remediation only at this point. We make no representation as to what we're going to do in the future, what it would be like, or what the timeline would be. And in full disclosure, there are certainly costs associated with ownership, demolition, including the pre-demolition environmental remediation, if any at all, utilities, mowing, etc. So it is not without cost to acquire these properties. Some additional notes. I do know that it's been noted that this has been a very fast timeline. That is true. The property went under contract on July 5th. July 8th, it was finally executed, originally the 5th, and then executed by the owner on the 7th, and that left 30 days for the due diligence period, which is standard, within an additional 30 days to close. And so that definitely did drive the timeline here. We can use tax increment financing for both the purchase and for possible projects, which could include affordable housing in this district. The property is to be delivered with all units vacant, and Ray may have more information for us on that. We would need to do pre-demolition environmental remediation, again, if any is found at all, and then demolition would be additional costs. Just a quick note as a reference point, I understand that the Urbandale district got a bid for demolishing Jensen of about $245,000. So it gives us a sense. It's likely a six-digit number, but I couldn't tell you with any certainty exactly where that's going to be. We do not have environmental records on the property. Building confirmed that its previous use was farmland, so we don't expect to find anything in the soil. Could there be some in the construction materials with regard to asbestos, et cetera? Possible. We'll have to verify that. And then finally, with regard to Polk County, have been interfacing with Supervisor Brownell They would consider assistance, but that's going to be dependent on clarification of our plans there. I think the county is interested in affordable housing with comprehensive or what are called wraparound services, at least at this point, but we can keep the conversation open. We thought, let's see how this goes today, and then we can make steps from there. Just a summary of the 4 action items then. There are 3 resolutions and then the council letter. The first resolution approves that assignment of the originally negotiated purchase agreement between the motel owner and Kalia Capital. This would be an action, if the council approves, to accept the assignment of that agreement. The seller did provide their written consent. They are responsible for any fees with the Econo Lodge. The resolution anticipates using TIF, and then if approved, the mayor would sign that addendum to the assignment of the purchase agreement. Number 2, authorizes execution of the assignment agreement with Kalia Capital. They are asking, and we've negotiated a fee of $125,000 to assign the property to the city from Kalia. In that agreement, we also indicate that we'll equally share a portion of the transaction legal costs associated with preparing this document. And city will reimburse Kalia $19,000 for those previously deposited escrow funds, but that just reduces the cost of the acquisition anyway. And then again, we make no representation with regard to any further project at the site with or without partnership with Kalia Capital. Doesn't impact at all the project on Hickman, but basically just says this is a clean transaction where the city acquires this. The last resolution is a commission agreement with CBRE. It would pay CBRE $25,000 for Ray Hamilton's services as the city's agent here. And then the city receives the benefit of the buyer's agency that was outlined in the original purchase agreement, which, if the council approves the terms, would be assigned to us. That has already been approved by the CBRE office in West Des Moines, and Nicole has that on file in the city clerk's office, or will shortly here. And then the last item is the approval of the council letter authorizes the city manager to sign and complete any required documents necessary for the acquisition. As you can imagine, there are multiple forms and documents that need to be signed up to, at, and potentially after the closing. So the council would give authorization that way. With that, I will stop sharing the slide deck so that we can open this up for conversation among the council, or any questions you may have for me or for Garrett or Ray.
This is Amy. I have a question. How are we ensuring that the building is going to be empty? Are there people currently living there? Are those individuals going to be rehomed? How will that transpire?
Ray, can you address that, please?
Yeah, I can touch on this. So I actually spoke with the current owner this afternoon, about an hour prior to this meeting. And so he confirmed that the property will be delivered vacant prior to closing, and that's written in the purchase agreement as such as well. There are currently 2 people in there that are living in there that he is going to have a conversation with today, but it is in the purchase agreement, written in the purchase agreement, that the building will be delivered completely vacant at closing.
Yeah, and one thing worth mentioning is since the fire happened in March of this year, the property's actually been vacant for the past several months. So these 2 tenants that are actively living there are brand new, and so they're a short-term guest, not a long-term tenant.
And when is that closing again?
We're looking at August 29th.
August 29th, yeah.
I'm wondering if Kalia could speak to the rationale for the $1.9 million price tag and also for the $125K assignment fee.
Ray, do you want to talk to the price point, and I'll talk to the assignment fee?
Yeah, so our team, we focus in, here at CBRE, we focus in market rate sales. We've done a handful of conversion deals as well, from motel to apartments. A lot of these are done on what we call basis plays on price per unit. At this price point, for the number of units, it's about $32,000 a unit. This property, and I can provide sale comps if needed. I firmly believe that if I were to market this property with the number of units that are here, the location, that we'd be able to achieve north of 1.9 as far as the sale price. It's as far as where this purchase price is at 32. We recently closed a similar deal in Des Moines that I believe the price per unit, just for reference, was at 39. So I feel like that 1.9 number is actually a very good price to purchase at.
Ray, can I jump in with just an additional clarification? How does the fire impact this, or how do you think through that when coming to a number like 1.9?
Yeah, so that would be just the 8 down units that are still impacted by the fire. The rest will be delivered rent ready, as we refer to it. And really how, we put a number on those 8 units is just what the price point would be per unit, and just multiply that by 8. Just an estimate. And I know Garrett's worked through that, that Garrett represents, worked with that as far as an estimate on a per unit cost, how much it would take. So just take that number and multiply it by 8.
Yeah, and based on our construction plans, we actually asked the owner to stop doing renovations because there were 21 units down. They've redone 13 of the 21, so there's 8 remaining. And we asked them to stop, knowing that we had construction plans to build out those units and mix up the unit mix a little bit, because right now, knowing that it's a motel, they're all studios, and we would want to make those 1 bedrooms if we were going to do our normal improvement plan.
Thanks. And Garrett, Councilmember Bodie had a question about the assignment fee, please.
Yeah, so the assignment fee, we looked at it from several different angles. The one we landed at was really opportunity cost. So looking at it, if we were to go through with our business plan of buying the property, putting in a lot of renovation costs to about 1.3 to 1.5 million, holding it for 5 years and then selling it in 5 years, there's about an opportunity cost of about 1.5 million. Some of that's to Kalia. About $1 million of it is to the investors that we had lined up for this property. So the 125 is about 8% of the 5-year total opportunity cost. And that's ultimately how we got to that number.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Moving further.
I just had one question here. So at closing, which being the end of the month, it's delivered vacant. Is there any initial plans for the city? Are we thinking the city is going to put up fence, or how are we going to then secure the property so that it's not kind of taken over or lived in beyond that?
Thanks, Councilmember Rosendahl. Yesterday afternoon, we convened a meeting with engineering, police, fire, facilities, and building. We put together a go-forward plan after closing so that we can swiftly move through an environmental study. But then, yes, we would secure the buildings. We've already talked with Ray about making sure that we've got master key, and obviously move to minimal utilities, just that's necessary to maintain some building integrity, exterior lighting, et cetera. But yes, all the departments are coordinated to make sure that we can deal with things as soon as possible.
Thank you.
All right. Any further? That we have four items for approval.
I motion acceptance of resolution 211-2024.
Motion by Rosendahl,
Second?
second by Kroll. Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Rosendahl?
Aye.
Kroll?
Yes.
Bodie?
No.
Carberry Montgomery?
Yes.
McBurney?
Yes.
Are we good?
Resolutions or? Excuse me?
Are we good to move to the second then?
Yes, that item passed, so.
Move resolution 212-2024.
By Rosendahl. Second by Kroll.
Second by
Discussion.
I'd like to make a quick comment. I just
Yes.
want to make sure that my no vote is not interpreted as one that's in any opposition whatsoever to affordable housing or addressing blight and vacant properties. I'm just hoping the no vote can be as a prompt and a reminder that we probably need to make sure we have maximized tools available to us to, over time, get better at making the price points that we're looking at more alignment with the assessed value. And that's what that no vote is about. I want to stretch our dollars as far as possible to address this kind of work because I agree with everyone how important it is. So I just wanted to go on record as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Rosendahl?
Yes.
Kroll?
Yes.
Bodie?
No.
Carberry Montgomery?
Yes.
McBurney?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that passes.
Motion to approve resolution 213-2024.
Motion by Rosendahl.
Second by Kroll?
Okay, second by Kroll. Discussion, roll call.
Rosendahl?
Yes.
Kroll?
Yes.
McBurney?
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery?
Yes.
Bodie?
No.
Thank you.
That item passes.
Motion to authorize the city manager to sign and complete the required documents necessary to acquire the property known as 10841 Douglas Avenue.
Motion by Rosendahl.
Second?
Second by Kroll. Discussion, roll call.
Rosendahl?
Yes.
Kroll?
Yes.
McBurney?
Yes.
Bodie?
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That item passes. We are at the end of our agenda, and it's 1 o'clock, so I will adjourn the meeting. Before I do, I sent a text, but I just want to note also for the record that the petition for the supervisors in Dallas County was officially presented this morning and accepted by the supervisors, and that will go on the vote on the ballot in November.
Thank you to everyone who helped out in any way on this. It was 5,004. Our goal was 5,000, and that gave us about a 10% cushion from the basic number that we were required. So I don't expect any problems. Stay tuned for education and advocacy transition.
Yep, absolutely.